Have you ever had a bad experience with a teacher or school staff member? From subtle manipulation to shocking violence, these cases will leave you questioning who you can truly trust. So, let's find out who's on the list. 9. Colleen Ritzer. 24-year-old algebra teacher Colleen Ritzer likely never imagined that her life was in danger when she entered her workplace in Danvers, Massachusetts one day in October of 2013. At some point during the day, a student later identified as Philip Chisholm followed her into a bathroom and slashed her throat with a pencil. Chisholm then wheeled Ritzer's lifeless body out of the school using a recycling bin and dumped her remains in a nearby forest. Later that evening, Chisholm's mother reported him missing to the local police, who traced his cell phone's location to a movie theater. The next day, officers found him walking along a roadside with a bloody knife in his bag, along with Ritzer's ID and some of her other belongings. His hands were still covered in blood from the previous day's attack. Around the same time, police found the slain teacher's body concealed beneath leaves and debris. During questioning, Chisholm said that Ritzer had set him off by using a trigger word, but he refused to go further into detail. He told officers, "After she insulted me, that's when I became the teacher." A witness revealed that Ritzer had brought up Chisholm's home state of Tennessee during a discussion after class, and that he became noticeably upset over it. Authorities charged Chisholm with murder and assault, and he was tried as an adult due to the severity of the crime. He was convicted of both counts and sentenced to 40 years in prison for the assault charge, along with 25 years to life for murder. He'll become eligible for parole after serving 25 years, much to the devastation of Ritzer's family, who believe that he does not deserve to ever step foot outside of prison for as long as he lives. 8. Joselyn Peters. Married Principal Cornelius M. Green became entangled in multiple affairs while working at a middle school in St. Louis, Missouri, including with a 30-year-old teacher named Joselyn Peters. In 2015, Peters became pregnant with Green's child. Desperate to avoid the inevitable marital problems and damage to his reputation that would come along with an out-of-wedlock child with his colleague, Green orchestrated a plan to have Peters murdered by his close friend Philip J. Cutler. After Cutler agreed to the plan, Green mailed him a package containing $2,500 cash while using the school's address as the return address. 3 weeks later, Cutler traveled to St. Louis from Oklahoma and met up with Green. He dropped Green off at an Amtrak station, where Green caught a train to Chicago in order to establish an alibi, then entered Peters' apartment using a pair of keys Green had given him. He shot Peters in the head, killing both the teacher and her unborn child. After returning to St. Louis, Green pretended to discover Peters' murdered body and called 911. Investigators eventually connected him and Cutler to the crime, and both men were sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in federal prison for 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder for hire and 1 count of murder for hire. 7. Caroline Lee. Just a week after being named Teacher of the Year at Darnell Cookman Middle/High School in Jacksonville, Florida in 2021, 60-year-old English language arts teacher Caroline Melanie Lee was accused of hitting a student who called her out for using a racial slur. According to a police report, suspicions about Lee's racially inappropriate language were raised by commenters on Instagram after the Duval County School District congratulated her in a post for being named Teacher of the Year. In addition to accusing Lee of using the N-word, several people claim that she had a history of displaying racially based microaggressions towards students. In response to one student's comment, Lee admitted to using the N-word in a teaching context during a discussion about the John Steinbeck novel Of Mice and Men. The student told Lee that they felt her use of the word was inappropriate, and Lee agreed, but the school district soon deleted the controversial post. A few days later, Lee contacted the student's first period teacher and asked to speak with the young woman, who was not in any of Lee's classes at the time. The student felt nervous about being alone in a classroom with Lee, so she went to the bathroom and then returned to her class. A short while later, Lee showed up at the classroom in search of the student, who was instructed to follow her to the classroom. Lee allegedly shut the door behind them and accused the student of threatening her. The student denied the allegation and claimed that Lee struck her in the face and head repeatedly while calling her names, causing her nose to bleed. Based on these accusations, Lee was charged with abuse and fired from her job. In an unexpected turn of events, however, the case against Lee was dropped after an investigation found no evidence that the crime occurred. Lee passed a polygraph exam while denying any wrongdoing, and evidence suggested that the student may have threatened the teacher on the deleted Instagram post just as Lee had claimed. Lee's name was cleared legally, but the damage to her reputation has prevented her from finding another job. She's since criticized the school district for jumping to conclusions and is advocating for better protections against teachers who are accused of committing crimes against students. World List isn't the same without you. Be sure you're tuning in by hitting that notification bell to stay updated on all the craziness. 6. Hiromi Adams. In April of 2022, a police officer responded to a complaint about a first-grade teacher acting strangely at Hammett Bowen Elementary School in Ocala, Florida. Witnesses reported seeing the teacher, Hiromi Adams, ducking into a student bathroom before she went to the school's health clinic for a checkup at the instruction of her superiors. During a search of the bathroom, the responding officer found a pill bottle with Adams' name on it, containing a straw and a substance which tested positive for MDMA, also known as ecstasy or Molly. A Marion County Sheriff's deputy located Adams off campus and found Suboxone while searching her. She was arrested on a possession charge, and the outcome of the case is unclear. 5. Ernest Roberts. 41-year-old schoolteacher Camila Russell was reported missing in Miami in May of 2014 when she failed to pick up her daughter from a babysitter's house. Nearly 2 weeks later, a man contacted law enforcement about a suspicious note he'd received from his colleague, 39-year-old Ernest Roberts, who'd previously worked at the same school as Russell. Roberts had recently transferred to a different school and was out of town when he contacted his friend about the note, which was found in a filing cabinet along with a set of car keys. It read, "Do you know anyone that can chop up a car?" and contained information about the vehicle's whereabouts, leading police to Russell's abandoned Audi. The concerned colleague also told investigators that Roberts had called him and said he killed a home intruder with a baseball bat. Police searched Roberts' house and found bloodstains, along with evidence that someone had put in extensive efforts to clean up the evidence. Russell's murdered body was found in a canal a few days later, and Roberts was charged with her murder. Russell and Roberts were close friends who'd known each other since childhood, leaving the victim's family shocked by her murder and the accused killer's involvement. More than 5 years later, the case is ongoing, and a trial date has yet to be set. 4. Lydia Johnson. In September of 2017, 29-year-old Lydia Johnson was accused of stealing thousands of dollars from a high school in Macomb, Michigan, where she worked as a Spanish teacher, and spending the money at a casino. According to prosecutors, Johnson oversaw the sale of homecoming tickets while serving as the school's event coordinator. Based on the number of sales, the profit should have totaled around $30,000, yet she only deposited around $11,000 into the event's designated bank account. During a search of Johnson's classroom, investigators found empty homecoming deposit envelopes, and her bank records reportedly showed deposits that far exceeded her income from teaching. In addition to the missing homecoming funds, Johnson was accused of pilfering over $12,000 that was collected for a student camping trip. She fell under suspicion after the campground contacted the school and reported that they'd repeatedly tried to collect the money with no success. School officials turned the investigation over to police detectives, who discovered that Johnson had spent upwards of $90,000 at the MGM casino in Detroit the previous year. She was placed on administrative leave and charged with 1 count of embezzlement from a non-profit organization in the amount of $1,000 to $20,000. Johnson pleaded no contest to the charge and was ordered to repay $30,000 to the school. She was also sentenced to 2 years of probation and required to undergo treatment for gambling and alcohol addiction. 3. Rayley Gson and Brooklyn Schuler. In June of 2024, a pair of so-called ride-or-die best friends named Rayley Gson and Brooklyn Schuler landed themselves in hot water. The pair were indicted on charges stemming from allegations that they had inappropriate relationships with students while working at Calhoun City Schools in Gordon County, Georgia. According to prosecutors, Gson victimized 2 male students between late October of 2021 and January of 2022, while Schuler was accused of targeting one male victim during the same time period. An indictment against the women states that they reasonably should have known that the victims were enrolled within the school district. Few other details have been released, including the defendants' former job positions, but a social media search revealed a long-standing friendship between Gson and Schuler. They served as the maid of honor in one another's weddings, which were both held after the alleged abuse took place. The women may also end up serving prison time together if convicted as charged, which would come with a maximum sentence of up to 25 years and a fine of up to $100,000. 2. Mark Cooper. Retired Missouri State University professor Mark Cooper and his wife Nancy were at home one evening in August of 2016 when a former colleague, 46-year-old Edward Gutting, charged into the residence with a knife in his hand. Mark tried running from his ex-co-worker, who had worked within the university's history department from 2011 to 2014, but he was unable to get away. Gutting followed Mark into the living room, knocked the 66-year-old to the ground, and stabbed him to death. Nancy attempted to intervene and was injured while trying to fight Gutting off of her husband. According to court documents, Gutting warned Nancy that he didn't want to hurt her, but that he would if he had to, and he warned her not to get involved in the situation, which was between him and Cooper. Following Mark's death, investigators discovered that Gutting was having money problems that he blamed Mark for. Although Cooper had retired 2 years prior to his murder, authorities speculated that Gutting wanted to be his replacement and that he somehow played a role in preventing it from happening. On the day of the crime, the university had made changes to the job position, which resulted in Gutting being disqualified from filling his former colleague's shoes. Gutting was charged with first-degree murder, and the case dragged its heels in court for several years as his competency to stand trial remained at the center of the proceedings. His defense attorneys repeatedly raised concerns that he was too mentally ill to assist with his case. When the case finally went to trial in 2023, the defense argued that Gutting was suffering from schizophrenic hallucinations at the time of the murder. The prosecution, on the other hand, accused Gutting of killing Cooper in an alcohol-fueled rage over some work-related incidents that he was still holding a grudge over, years after the victim had retired. Following a 6-day bench trial, the judge overseeing the case found Gutting not guilty by reason of insanity. He'll be housed at a state mental hospital until he's no longer deemed a threat to himself or others, which means that he could remain locked up for the rest of his life, or he could see freedom again at some point in the future. 1. Angelica Torres. In October of 2022, 25-year-old 5th grade teacher Angelica Torres was accused of threatening to kill students and staff members at St. Stanislaus School in East Chicago, Indiana. The allegation came from a student who claimed that Torres has a list and that the student was on the bottom of it. Torres was immediately pulled from the classroom and soon admitted to making the disturbing statement. She also reportedly confessed to having a kill list, but would not provide the details of it beyond admitting that the student who reported her was on it. School officials told her to leave and stay away while an investigation was carried out, then contacted law enforcement. After discovering the nature of the allegations, Lake County investigators obtained an order to arrest and detain Torres. She pleaded guilty to an intimidation charge in August of 2023 and was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather work as a teacher overseeing a classroom of notoriously rowdy students with no respect for their elders, or in a job involving long periods of isolation that are known to drive workers to the brink of insanity? Let us know in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe, and hopefully you don't end up on the list.